It's often said by old-time railroaders that a hat full of sand can save a train on a rainy night. The hat they are referring to is the steam engine sand dome where the sand is stored. Diesel engines obviously don't have domes, and their sand boxes are located under their frame near their wheels. Sand is used to gain traction on slippery rails, such as during rainstorms. An engine's wheels could slip and slip and slip, but once the fireman applies sand, the engine could make it over the hill to their destination. Both steam and diesel engines get their sand from a structure called a sanding tower. Early one morning, the engines of the Southern United Railroad were leaving South Plainsville's sheds on their way to work. Except for Sarah, it was her day off that day. Kevin was due to take a passenger train, but he stayed behind a little longer to talk to Sarah. His fireman looked at his watch. "Come on, Kevin, it's time to go." "Okay," Kevin replied. "Goodbye, Sarah." "Goodbye, Kevin," she replied. Kevin had plenty of water, but he was low on coal, so he stopped at the coaling tower. "This isn't good," said the driver. "What's not good?" replied Kevin. "You're low on sand. We're going to have to stop at the sanding tower after this." "But the sanding tower's on the other side of the yard," Kevin said. "I'm going to be late if we go there. I'll be fine without sand for one day." Kevin's driver was anxious, but agreed with Kevin. At the station, Christian was coupled to his mail train, and Larry was coupled to another passenger train when Kevin backed in. "Oh, phew," said Christian. "I was getting worried. You were almost late." "I know," replied Kevin. "I had to skip going to the sanding tower this morning." "I don't think that's a good idea," Larry said. "But it's a clear day, Larry," replied Kevin. "It's not due to rain or snow at all. I'll be fine without sand." "Okay," said Larry, "but you gotta be prepared for anything." "I'll be fine," said Kevin, and as soon as the conductor was ready, he set off. Meanwhile, Jorge was making his way to Otisville to help Temu shunt freight cars. However, unbeknownst to him, as he passed through Denville, he began to leak oil badly. When he arrived at Piscataway Hill, Jorge began going slower and slower and slower until he finally stopped halfway up. "What's going on?" Jorge asked his driver. "Seems like you've run out of oil, but that's impossible. You had a full tank when you left." Just then, Khadijah arrived, running light down the hill. "Jorge, what's wrong?" she asked. "I run out of fuel some kind of way," Jorge said sadly. "Well, don't worry, Jorge," said Khadijah. "I'll help you." And Khadijah quickly puffed away to switch tracks. While that was going on, Kevin puffed into Denville Station. The tracks felt a little funny, but he didn't pay any attention. Soon the passengers were on board and the conductor was ready. Kevin's driver pulled the throttle, but all Kevin's wheels did was spin in place. "What?" said Kevin. "Why aren't I moving?" His fireman laid sand on the rails, but it wasn't enough. Kevin's wheels kept slipping on the wet rails. The passenger cars were cross. "What's the hold up here?" they said. "We're going to be late." Kevin just ignored them and tried to get the train moving, but to no avail. Kevin's driver shut off his regulator. He didn't want to risk damaging Kevin's valve gear. The driver and fireman went to inspect the track. "There's oil on these tracks," Kevin's driver said. "Oil?" said Kevin. "How did that get there?" "We have no time to figure that out now," said the driver. "We have to get this train moving." The driver, fireman, and conductor passed up buckets of sand to load into Kevin's sand dome. Mr. McCormick had Benny stop his shunting and to help get Kevin's train moving. With a lot of puffing and wheel slip, Kevin tried to get the train moving. His fireman skillfully and carefully laid sand on the rails to give Kevin a better grip, and Benny's driver did the same. And then, at last, Kevin departed the station. However, by now Kevin was real late, and he tried as hard as he could to make up for lost time. But it was impossible. That night at the sheds, Jorge apologized to Kevin. "I'm so sorry, Kevin," said Jorge. "I didn't know my oil tank was leaking until I got to Piscataway Hill." "Don't worry," said Kevin. "It's not your fault." Kevin then looked at Larry. "I should have listened to your warning, Larry. You're right. Anything can happen." "Well," sighed Larry with a smile, "like old engines say, a hat full of sand can save a train on a rainy night." "Not in this case," said Jorge. "What do you mean?" asked Kevin. "In this case, a hat full of sand would have saved you from a leaky diesel." The three engines roared into laughter and talked about wheel slip and sand all night long.